Aya ewe malaka koke, te pewe shite ane ni olaka koke nunga kakekwe, papa gamwa wenzo ane, nila Myaamia me tosenya, Myaamia ngonji pyayane, ni he mishingo mujake ewe makeke. Nunge achimane ishe iilaataweentiiyankwi. So I said, hello, my relatives. Good to see you all today. My name is Scott Shoemaker, and I'm a citizen of the Myaami Nation of Indiana, and my family is the Myaamia band. And I'm going to be talking to you today about sort of my experience with ribbon work and how the things that I've learned along the way. And I really want to, I guess I can use this. Okay. I want to start with some of these images, and this is sort of how my interest in ribbon work began. And so looking at a lot of these old family photos within my family and other families in Indiana, and asking older people when I was growing up, what were these things? Because these weren't things that I recognized as Myaami people at the time wearing, and what happened to these. And so a lot of the things that I learned was that this was something that Myaami people used to practice, and that some of these things that people were wearing that ended up being sold to several museums. And so a lot of these things have been scattered far beyond the Myaami community. And this was also around the time when I began with the language revitalization in the communities, and thinking about this idea of, our language was dormant, and as a lot of people have been talking about, this dormancy of knowledge that's happened through colonization, and that this dormancy of ribbon work also occurred around that same time too. So the practice of ribbon work and the objects in which ribbon work was done on them rest in not just like archives, like some of the language materials, but in the collections of museums that are spread far beyond the community. And so as I began thinking about this and looking at a lot of these images of Myaami people wearing these, my experience with language revitalization really began to inform how I started thinking about ribbon work. And one of the things that really struck me last night was Dr. Leanne Hinton talking about conversation. And that's one of those things that we all really long for in terms of how can we speak to one another? What's this common language? How can we use this as a common language to speak to one another? And really thinking about ribbon work is also this form of language too, and how it is a part of the way in which we see ourselves in the world and our relationship to that. And so this is, it's a little bit hard because of the red's not showing up in this, but I'll let you know when there's red, and we'll pretend that there's red. So thinking about it's also this idea of landscape too, and thinking about our relationship to the land that we come from, and the idea of Kishikwe, of the sky, being a place controlled by the Chingwea, the thunder beings, and Ashikawe, the earth, and the waters, being a place controlled by Lenapinja, the underwater panther. And that our place in between that, as Mitosenyaki, as human beings, is to maintain a balance between this, these above and below worlds, and then also a balance in our relationships to the human and plant and animal worlds that surround us. So it reminds us of what it means to be a nahe Mitosenyaki, a proper human being, is somebody who strives to maintain a balance in relationship to all of those different things. And so some of these things are embedded in symbols or abstractions. So we'll pretend that this is red, and you might not be able to see it, but it's more of sort of an hourglass shape at the top here. And this is a close-up of a bag that is at the National Museum of American Indian. And on one side it has these abstracted images of the Chingwea, which is this hourglass shape. And then at the bottom, it also has an abstraction of, there's another shape, and thinking about the two hourglass shapes of the Chingwea also create a diamond shape, and I'll talk more about that shape later. And then the abstraction of Lenapinja's body is more of this kind of elongated hexagon. And so you begin to see some of these things around the time that ribbon work really started taking off in the Great Lakes in the late 1700s and early 1800s. But it's really grounded in these pre-contact indigenous aesthetics and Myaamia aesthetics that I call. And so this image on the left is this really interesting pair of leggings at the Cranbrook Institute of Science. And the background is a wool cloth, and then on top of that is deer skin, and it's been cut out in patterns that you can see the hourglass shapes that are similar to the chinguia, or the thunder beings, and then the diamond shapes that's in between there. And so I don't, maybe this is a precursor to ribbon work, or something. One of the interesting things is on these pair of leggings too is there's remnants of ribbon work on that as well. So this sort of transition to ribbon work. And so the ribbons came, as I mentioned, with Europeans, and they really, I think the ribbons really took those designs and that aesthetic to a lot farther levels. And so you can begin to see the various ways in which just a diamond is used in the different colors. And sort of the dark, I guess the lighter colors on these are, we'll pretend that they're red. And so you begin to see some of these abstractions of the shapes of the thunder beings, of Lenapinja, and just these multiple ways in which these designs can really take shape. So I'll start with the diamond, which is kind of the very, it's used throughout the Miami ribbon work. And so you think about the diamond, that it has 4 points. It also has 4 sides, and that 4 is a very important number. One of those being related to the 4 directions, and the colors associated with those directions are also those colors that are used in those historic pieces at different museums. And so representing that relationship that we have to those 4 directions. And this is another idea that you can sort of stretch the diamond into creating this shape. And then you can stretch it another way into creating an elongated diamond. And that you can, when you put 4 diamonds together, then you create a 4th diamond, or I mean a 5th diamond that's in the center here. And so that's one thing that that I'll be talking a little bit more about here too, is this, it really, I think, sets up this idea of these sort of the duality you see in that idea of landscape, of the earth and the sky, and the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknown. And one of the things that I like to point out is those images that you see where one side is black and it's the outline of a vase, and then if you look at the white side of it, that is the outline of a face. So it makes your eye focus back and forth between these two different, the positive and the negative. And it creates this almost shimmering effect to the ribbon work. And this is an example that Miami County Museum just recently acquired a couple of years ago. And they labeled them as headbands, but they're not headbands. They're moccasin flaps. And so these are 4 different moccasin flaps, and each one of those, it really illustrates the varieties of ways in which that diamond can be used. Even the top two flaps are just strictly diamonds, but just the different ways in which you use different colors makes these completely different patterns. And so that's one thing that I'm really excited about for this this National Endowment for the Arts project that's going on, and thinking about that it is this other common language we can begin to use within the community, and that it's something that I think can be just as powerful as language, and something that can something that we can really go beyond some of those ideas of sort of the traditional ways in which ribbon work is used, in terms of it's not just things on moccasin flaps or leggings or blankets, but how can we begin to use this as a way to communicate with each other in the present and in the future as well. And so my talk is a lot shorter than what I had timed earlier. I kind of skipped through things, but yeah, so I'll just keep talking. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll talk more about the construction. I had a blank slide there and I thought that it was ending. Okay, so we'll pretend that the bottom has a red ribbon on it. You can't see it. Top one has a blue. And so thinking about sort of that idea of the coming together between the earth and the sky. And so it's when, again, pretend that there's a red ribbon and a blue coming together. And I found this great quote from this Meskwaki ribbonwork artist, Myaamia, or Adeline. And Meskwaki are very closely related in language, and they continue to have a very strong tradition of ribbon work within their communities. And thinking that idea of the coming together between two different patterns creates a third pattern that you might not have seen there previously. And so it's that idea of, you know, the coming together of the earth and the sky. And I think it really resonates to me about that idea of about what it means to be a proper human being, anahimitose-nyaki. And so again, I'll pretend that there's a red ribbon at the top. And so ribbon work is this real kind of layering. And it's layering, I think, of just not only of the materials, but layering of all these different ideas and concepts that are really embedded in them. And this is something that I've really started to learn as I was beginning to do ribbon work. And one of the things that really, the first time I actually saw some ribbon work was a pair of moccasins that were associated with Francis Slocum. And just seeing these I was just amazed by them. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm gonna try that. And so I found a little bit of what was written on that out there, and there's not really much available in terms of anything about ribbon work. And so I began kind of experimenting with it, and I met some other ribbon work artists. I met a lady from the Osage Nation, and she basically said, yeah, you're doing it right. So that made me feel good. But as I began learning about this, thinking about, like, I'm also kind of in a conversation too with the materials, and the feeling that you get when you're learning the language, and that you have this deep connection and relationship to your ancestors, and that they're almost sort of speaking to you through this. And it's just that same sort of process that I had as I was beginning to do ribbon work, and a lot of the knowledge that you learn through that. Mostly patience. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a long time. But sort of the process of ribbon work involves sort of this layering of ribbons upon each other. And it's not necessarily cutting the outline of the ribbon, but you're cutting perpendicular cuts into it, and you're folding that under. And then this layer gets placed upon the next, and so on. And so you can do lots of different designs, and the designs are endless. And I think that's one of the closing comments that I really wanted to think about, is that, and let's pretend that there's red on here again, is that, I think the language has really enabled us to think about just the unlimited ways in which we can begin to reclaim all of these things that have been in dormancy within our communities. And that ribbon work can be one of those really powerful ways that we can use, again, to be nahimitose-nyaki, and to speak to one another in a common language. So that's the end of my presentation.